El Salvador, a small country in Central America, tried to recover after a long and bloody civil war. However, gang violence increased rapidly in the post-war period. In 2023, a controversial era began with the opening of CECOT prison, designed to house the country's most notorious criminals. Officially known as the Center for the Containment of Terrorism, CECOT symbolizes President Nayib Bukele's tough approach to security. Two of the country's most notorious gangs, Mississippi 13 and Barrio 18, have terrorized El Salvador for years. While supporters praise CECOT as a tool to dismantle powerful gangs, critics condemn it as a potential source of human rights violations. The prison stands as a stark reminder of the challenges El Salvador faces and the difficult choices it has had to make in its search for peace. A fortress of concrete and steel, CECOT prison dominates the landscape with its size and imposing design. The sprawling complex covering 165 hectares is a testament to the government's determination to bring El Salvador's infamous gangs under control. Security is paramount at CECOT, boasting layered barriers designed to prevent escapes and maintain order. Two imposing concrete walls topped with razor wire encircle the perimeter, while 19 watchtowers provide a panoramic view. Inside, a complex network of 850 security cameras monitors every corner, leaving no area unobserved. CECOT's physical structure reflects the government's resolve to break the back of organized crime. Inside CECOT's imposing walls, a sea of white stretches across the prison yard. This scene captures the moment when the prisoners in their uniform white attire stand in strict formation. Each one, stripped of their individuality, shares the same fate. The uniformity is a stark reminder of the loss of personal identity within these walls, a stark visual reminder of the inhumane conditions faced by the inmates. In this overcrowded environment, personal space is almost non-existent. Around every corner, faces struggling to survive. The sheer number of inmates crammed into these cells is overwhelming. Stripped of their individuality, the prisoners wear identical white uniforms with shaved heads. These uniforms erase their identities, reducing them to numbers. Each one, a part of the same white sea, moving in unison. The daily lives of CECOT's inmates follow a rigid routine, tightly controlled by the ever-present guards. The guards monitor every move, punishing even the slightest deviation. This constant surveillance creates an atmosphere of fear and tension. Overcrowding is a constant reality, with cells designed for 100 inmates often holding far more. This further exacerbates the prisoners' living conditions, making it difficult to find even a small space to rest. Basic sanitation is inadequate, with just 2 toilets and 2 sinks shared amongst the masses. This increases hygiene problems and the risk of disease. The lack of proper facilities is a daily struggle for the inmates. Prisoners spend 23.5 hours of each day confined to these cramped quarters with limited movement and muted voices. These long hours take a toll on their physical and mental health. Each day they are lost within the same monotonous routine, with little hope for change. CECOT prison has become synonymous with allegations of human rights abuses. It has become a focal point of international condemnation, casting a long shadow over El Salvador's fight against organized crime. The prison's reputation has sparked debates and discussions on the global stage. The prison stands out with its high walls and tight security measures. However, behind this facade lie the hardships and human rights violations experienced by the inmates. Reports of torture, inhumane treatment, and inadequate medical care paint a grim picture of life within the prison walls. The stories from inside are harrowing and deeply troubling. Prisoners struggle to survive in overcrowded cells. Inadequate medical care leads to the spread of diseases and the deterioration of inmates' health. This points to negligence on the part of the prison administration. The lack of basic hygiene and sanitation exacerbates the dire conditions. Access to the prison is tightly controlled, and entry for independent observers and human rights organizations is often denied. This results in the conditions inside the prison being hidden from the outside world. Transparency is severely lacking, raising further concerns. According to some sources, since its opening in 2023, over 180 inmates have died within its walls. These deaths are seen as a consequence of the poor conditions and inadequate medical care within the prison. The numbers are alarming and continue to rise. Critics argue that the lack of proper medical care and the brutal conditions within the prison are significant contributing factors. Prisoners' health problems are ignored, and this leads to an increase in deaths. The situation calls for urgent reforms and immediate attention. The world watches, hoping that justice will prevail and that the human cost of El Salvador's gang crackdown will not be forgotten. Human rights advocates continue to fight for improved conditions in this prison. Their efforts aim to bring about change and ensure that the voices of the inmates are heard. President Nayib Bukele's rise to power in El Salvador in 2019 was extraordinary. The young and charismatic leader took office with the support of a large segment of the population. Bukele gained attention with his promise to solve the country's long-standing crime problems, which had plagued the nation for decades. His tough approach, embodied by the construction of CECOT prison, which began in 2020, and a series of controversial security measures, has earned him both ardent admiration and harsh criticism. This new prison became a symbol of his zero-tolerance policy towards criminals, aiming to eradicate gang violence. Often described as mano dura, or iron fist, Bukele's policies have undoubtedly had an impact on El Salvador's crime rates. The increased presence of police and soldiers on the streets created a deterrent effect against criminals, making many citizens feel safer. Since he took office, murders have decreased and heavily armed soldiers now patrol the streets. This drop in crime rates is seen as a success of Bukele's policies, bringing a sense of relief to many communities. However, this newfound security comes at a price. Prisons have become overcrowded and allegations of human rights abuses have increased, raising concerns among human rights advocates. Bukele's critics argue that his methods disregard human rights and undermine democratic institutions. These criticisms are also supported by international human rights organizations, which have called for greater transparency and accountability. The Bukele effect has left El Salvador a deeply divided nation. Society struggles to strike a balance between security and freedoms as the debate over the right approach to governance continues. CECOT prison has become a focus of international scrutiny, drawing condemnation from both human rights organizations and foreign governments. The United Nations, Amnesty International, and Human Rights Watch have voiced their concerns about the prison's conditions and allegations of abuse. Despite international outcry, Bukele has remained defiant, dismissing the criticism as interference in El Salvador's internal affairs. Within El Salvador, public opinion about CECOT and Bukele's policies is deeply divided. Many, weary of years of gang violence, applaud his tough stance and credit him with bringing a sense of security to their lives. While statistics point to a decrease in crime rates in El Salvador, they fail to capture the full human cost of Bukele's iron fist approach. For the families of those incarcerated in CECOT, life has become a relentless cycle of worry and despair. Visits are infrequent and tightly controlled, leaving loved ones with little information about the fate of those inside. Beyond the prison walls, communities grapple with the fallout from mass arrests and the constant presence of security forces. The fear of being caught in the crossfire of the government's war on gangs is palpable. The human cost of El Salvador's gang crackdown extends beyond the direct victims of violence. As El Salvador navigates a turbulent period in its history, the future of CECOT prison remains uncertain. International pressure on El Salvador to address the human rights concerns surrounding CECOT is unlikely to diminish. But Bukele shows no signs of backing down from his hardline approach. He remains popular among many Salvadorans who credit him with bringing a measure of peace to their lives. The question is whether he can maintain that support while addressing legitimate concerns about human rights abuses. CECOT's future is inextricably linked to the future of El Salvador. The story of CECOT prison isn't over yet. It's a story still being written, a larger microcosm of the struggle to find a balance between security and human rights within El Salvador. The challenges facing El Salvador are immense. Decades of gang violence have left deep scars on the nation's psyche, and the allure of quick fixes is undeniable. The legacy of CECOT prison remains to be seen. The choices El Salvador's leaders make in the months and years ahead will determine the prison's ultimate legacy.